I hope you're having a good afternoon. My name is Brent Cooper. I'm the manager of end-user computing at Marathon Oil in Houston, Texas. I have the enviable task of trying to keep you awake after lunch, so please bear with me. Today we're going to talk about a journey. We're going to talk about a journey that includes xMatters, but the journey is much larger than that. This journey is about IT transformation, a complete transformation of our IT organization in the last year and a half. And I'm going to talk about that journey, that transformation, and how xMatters was an enabling technology to assist us with that transformation. First, I'm going to talk a little bit about Marathon Oil, what we do, our history, then talk about the IT organization just very briefly, just to give you some background. And then I'm going to talk about the drivers for that transformation. What caused us to have to go through that complete IT transformation in the last year and a half? Then we're going to talk about the former NOC process that we had in place. And then talking about monitoring and event notification redesign as part of that larger transformation discussion. Then I'm going to share with you the results after the transformation and where we are today with xMatters and as it relates to where we are going forward. So Marathon Oil has been in business for 128 years, started off in Ohio, and it has a very rich history. But we have to go back in time a little bit of a flashback in our story. Prior to 2011, Marathon Oil was an integrated oil and gas company, meaning, if you're not familiar with oil and gas companies, that the upstream exploration and production business and the downstream refining, distribution, and retail business were all under one company. So in 2011, the upstream oil and gas component of the business, the exploration and production component, spun off into its own company, its own entity, and that is the company that I work for, Marathon Oil. We currently have over 2.2 billion barrels of oil equivalent in reserves and about 3,000 employees globally. We have operations in North America, including Canada, and that's our primary operations, where we are heavy players in shale, oil and gas exploration and production. We also have operations in UK, Africa, and the Middle East. Marathon prides itself in driving its business model based on a foundation of strong core business values. Those business values have been part of the organization for a very long time, and they focus on health and safety, environmental stewardship, open and honest communication with our shareholders and our partners, a community partnership, and a results-focused mentality. Those core values form the foundation of the way we operate and are the basis of what our CEO calls our 7 strategic imperatives. Those strategic imperatives drive how we do business. And they really focus on investing in our people, making sure that we have quality resource plays, focusing on long-term shareholder value, and having an extreme focus on cost, both capital and operating and expense. From an IT perspective, we're part of the F&A organization. And our mission statement really revolves around providing innovative solutions. Because we understand, as you do, that in this changing, fast-changing IT environment, we have to be innovative. We have to innovate if we're going to compete. If we're going to compete against our, other companies in the environment, if we're going to deliver the kinds of things that our customers desire, whether they're internal or external, we have to continually innovate. Our IT services are really delivered by 5 different groups within IT. Our exploration and production business unit is supported by its own group within IT, as is international operations. The other 3 IT groups really are focused on delivering the enterprise services that the entire business uses. All the infrastructure, the back office applications such as SAP, all of the IT service management suite, etc. As end user computing, we fall under the enterprise services group, which includes infrastructure and all IT service management. And end user computing includes service desk and desk side support, printer support, PC support, and the software that it runs on, mobility, email, collaboration, Citrix and VDI, and IT service management, including ServiceNow, supporting incident, change, problem, et cetera, and of course xMatters for notification. So within enterprise services, how do we deliver on those 7 strategic imperatives and our IT mission statement? Well, the first is we have an extreme focus on reliability. We really need to have our systems be reliable for obvious reasons, but also it's a continuous improvement type of operation. So we're continually looking for ways to make our systems more reliable. Also, the delivery of the right services in a timely fashion is also something that we really focus hard on. Training is important for us, and we continue to train even in this hard environment, this hard $45 an oil or less environment that we're in right now. It's important to continue to invest in our people, even in that environment. And having an enabling infrastructure that supports that innovation. So if you have an infrastructure that's stale, that doesn't change, that doesn't evolve itself, it can't support the innovative technologies that reside on top of that. And so that's something that we focus on as well. So here's where the story really begins. I'll talk to you a little bit about how in 2011, Marathon Oil split off from its other company and formed its own business, its own company. That was in 2011. In 2013, Marathon got a new CEO, CFO, CIO, and COO. And so you can imagine the amount of organizational change that came in 2013. I'm going to focus on the IT side. And when the new CIO came on board in 2013 and looked around, what he saw was an IT organization that was delivering services in the same way that it had delivered services, for the most part, when it was an integrated oil and gas company. At the time of the split in 2011, the processes that were in place, a lot of the infrastructure that was in place, the systems that were in place, the way of thinking of IT that was in place was the same or similar to the way it was when we were an integrated oil company. As a smaller E&P company, we needed to rethink how we delivered IT services if we were going to be competitive and drive down costs for IT. At that time, in 2013, our IT was almost completely outsourced to a number of different partners. We had 3 major vendors supporting our IT environment, both from an infrastructure and an application perspective, and numerous minor partners that worked with us to deliver IT services. And while that model is good for a number of companies, some large, some small, but mostly large companies, the services that were being delivered in such a way as they were somewhat inefficient. And while our vendors' SLA cards every month were green across the board in terms of their SLAs, there was still quite a bit of dissatisfaction within the organization around IT. And most importantly, the CIO saw that there was a need for more technical leadership and technical know-how and technical capability and accountability within IT. Because for the most part, we had relegated, delegated, and given over the support of IT to our partners. And we became, for the most part, managers of those partnerships, even though we were IT. So the CEO said, okay, we're going to change the way we do things. We're going to streamline what we do. We're going to reclaim that technical leadership, that technical responsibility, and that accountability internal to IT. And we are going to transform how we deliver those services. And oh, by the way, we're going to do it cheaper. So at the end of 2013, the beginning of 2014, we began to bring IT back in-house. Now you can imagine when that happened that there was a lot of confusion about what we were going to do, how we were going to do it, and how we were going to do it cheaper. Because most of the IT delivery was going to be done from Houston, Texas. And so that was a problem that we were going to have to work out. But the main thing is our leadership wanted us to be thinking about an ownership mentality, accountability, taking initiative, adaptability, and being in the driver's seat. And not be, partner managers, but really to be the innovators within the company. So we had a number of problems to solve as part of this story. We'll get to the X Matters piece in a second, I promise. The first thing is, where do you get your people? What people do you need? What do they need to be good at? The second is, you're not going to have as many people as you had in the past when your IT was being delivered by your partners. There's no way you could afford to have as many people. So you're going to have to do more with less. And that means that the processes that IT supports either have to be streamlined with non-value added tasks eliminated, or they have to be simplified, or they have to be automated. And so we started on that journey of not only figuring out which people we needed to have in place, but what processes needed to be transformed. And finally, how are we going to use technology to actually make that happen, to leverage technology to help us automate those tasks which do not require a high level of sophistication or a high level of technical knowledge. So, in end-user computing, our focus as having part of the monitoring infrastructure and having ServiceNow was, how do we transform the monitoring and notification of system events to go without a knock? Because in 2013, with multiple vendors, each of those major vendors had either a NOC or a monitoring team whose sole responsibility was to sit at a computer and watch for alerts come in on their monitor. There was over 20 individuals dedicated simply for that purpose. And if they saw an alert come in over a monitor, they would take a look at it, and if it was on their list as being a critical alert, they'd pick up the phone and call the help desk. And when they called the help desk, they'd say, hey, well, I just got an alert. Looks like a server's down. I need you to page out somebody on the Windows team. And the help desk would look up on their spreadsheet who was responsible for the Windows environment and who was on call. And they'd pick up the phone and they'd call that person who was on call. And if they answered the phone, great. If they didn't, they'd have to figure out who the next person was and on down the line until someone actually picked up the phone. And then when that person picked up the phone and started working the issue, they would log into ServiceNow and say, I've got the problem, and they'd start fixing it and update the ticket, and you're off and going. Pretty inefficient process. And what made it worse was the fact that in this environment, with all these different players and all these manual processes and all this manual communication going on, it made it more complex. And there was a tendency to do, well, it's not my problem, it's really the application's problem. No, it's not the application's problem, it's the server's problem. And it was expensive, labor-intensive, inefficient, and it had a fairly high mean time to resolve. In general, our customers were not satisfied with the model, even though in the end it got the job done. We knew we couldn't replicate that in the newly transformed IT staffing model. So what do you do? What do you do if you don't have a NOC? How do you make sure that your systems will remain operating if a server goes down in the middle of the night? How do you call the right person at the right time to go and look at it and fix it. So we set about redesigning our monitoring and notification process. And that redesign had some criteria. And the basic criteria were, well, we don't have the staff to have a NOC, so now what? We had to design a process that was as foolproof as we could make it. We already had some systems in place to do the monitoring side. We had SCOM for Windows. We had SAP for the SAP environment. We had SolarWinds for the network environment, all of which were generating alerts. Great. So that's one piece of the puzzle that we already in place. We had ServiceNow in place as our incident and ticketing system, which is great. And it had assignment groups in it, and it was filled with the information needed to know who was responsible for tickets, which is good. But those two systems were not well integrated. What was missing was the notification piece, because the notification up to this point had all been manual for the most part. And so in mid-2014, we put together an RFP to start that notification system acquisition. And we had a few criteria. A, it had to integrate with ServiceNow. That was not an option. It had to be easy to use, maintain multiple schedules. It had to support escalation, automatic escalation, and it had to support multiple communication vectors, multiple communication channels. And there was a lot of discussion around, okay, which way should people be notified? Should they be notified by text, by telephone, by application, by email, et cetera? But we wanted that flexibility. We wanted that option on which way to go. So after the RFP process was complete, it was done pretty rapidly. xMatters was the clear winner. And by the way, we didn't even consider on-prem. I had used the on-prem tool at a previous employer, and it was a great tool, but we did not want to add additional burden to our infrastructure from a standpoint of maintaining the environment. Because we already knew that we were having to do more with less. Why add another system to that if there was a cloud offering that would do the same thing? So we took a leap of faith and we went into the cloud, and we've been very happy with that. So now we had all three components. We had the monitoring systems, we had a ticketing system, and we had a notification system, none of which really talk to each other very well yet. And we had some ideas about how the process should work, but it needed to be proved. So we did what typically is done when you're going to do a more complex project. You start small, make it successful, and then build on it. And so what we did, instead of trying to integrate all these components together the first time, we started with a simple proposal to take SolarWinds, which monitors our network environment, and integrate it directly with xMatters, with email integration. Didn't worry about creating a ticket at first. We didn't worry too much about that. We just needed to get those notifications out of SolarWinds to the person that needed to know about it so they could fix the issue. Then they could go into ServiceNow and create the ticket later. And we needed to do that quickly. We needed to do it quickly because the team that was the network part of the NOC, and when I say NOC, I'm using a loose definition of NOC to include not only the network monitoring, but also operations monitoring of servers and applications. We had to do it quickly. We had 30 days to get it done, and we did. We got it done in under 30 days, including design, implementation, testing, training, and rollout. It was really fast. So the email integration capabilities of xMatters is really good, really fast. And so we were very happy with how that worked out. We were able to do that first step of transitioning away from Eyes on Glass into a fully automated notification environment. So that was good, but we knew it wasn't a permanent solution. It was a temporary fix to get us over the hump. And so next we started thinking about phase 2, which was the end-to-end integration of event notification. And the end-to-end integration really meant all of our monitoring systems sending alerts for priority 1 or priority 2 with a high urgency to ServiceNow, creating an incident automatically ServiceNow talking to xMatters to page out automatically once the technician received that notification, to have that receipt go back through xMatters and back into ServiceNow to update the ticket automatically that person had received the notification, and then they're off and running. So by doing that, you're now not worried about people in the middle. Monitoring system picks up an alert, evaluates if it's a critical alert. If so, sends it to ServiceNow. ServiceNow goes to xMatters, they page out, and it comes back. That was phase 2. To do phase 2, we engaged xMatters Professional Services to help us with the ServiceNow integration. And we used an internal team to finish the integration between our monitoring systems and ServiceNow. We did those basically in parallel. And so within another 60 days, we had completed phase 2 integration, which is the full end-to-end integration of our monitoring and notification system in xMatters. This is a screen of what it looks like when the xMatters response comes back into a ServiceNow ticket. ServiceNow, if you don't have ServiceNow, I'm sure most ticketing systems have this capability. As you make changes to an incident ticket, it logs the notes that are being changed on that ticket automatically, and this is what it looks like from xMatters when someone picks up a page. And so you've got that auditability in your ticketing system as well as in xMatters. Now, when we did the integration, we also wanted to make sure that from a master data perspective, the groups in ServiceNow matched the groups in xMatters. We wanted to make sure that data was consistent. So as part of the go live, we imported all the groups and users of those groups into xMatters so that when we went live, we already had the people and the groups they belong to in the tool. The only thing that was needed at that point was to create the schedules and the escalations. And we did that one team at a time, a couple of teams at a time. And so that enabling technology of xMatters helped us with our IT transformation from not only a NOC-based approach to monitoring and notification to an automated approach, but also it gave us good perspective on how to automate other processes within IT, and we're continuing to do that. And so by the end of the IT transformation, in about mid-2015, we had hired 60 employees, we had streamlined processes, we had eliminated processes, and we had implemented technology to continue that process in the future. The next stage is really talking more about orchestration, automating events from service catalogs. So if somebody requests a VM like they do in the cloud, why do you need to spend a week and a half haggling over the size of the VM and creating the VM? Just create standard VMs and automate the deployment of those VMs using automation orchestration technology. That's where we're going next. So what do we have right now? We have 43 groups in ServiceNow. You can see the list there. And 178 IT staff using xMatters. And we're evaluating it for non-IT functions as well. So trying to stick on time. I think I'm close. That's our story. So I'm going to open it up for questions.
Thanks, Brent. Any questions for Brent? There's one back here.
Of non-IT projects that have already been considered?
So in the field, we have on occasion what we call CERT drills. And on those CERT drills, it basically simulates a issue in the field. It could be a spill or some other thing going on in the field. And when that happens, they use a system to notify those people with. It's another notification system we have in-house. Xmatters could be used for the same thing, and we're evaluating whether or not we make that transition or stick with what we have.
Do you need help with that, Brent? I've got an idea.
Yeah, I bet you do.
Okay. Other questions for Brent? Here's
Sure.
one over here.
Did you bring in Accenture when you guys did this transformation, or Deloitte, or you guys, your CIO, along with the leadership team, go down that path?
No, this is all driven by our CIO.
The question, just so everybody heard, is did you bring in a system integrator or a consulting company like an Accenture or Deloitte to help with the decision?
And that decision was based on his prior experience, so direct prior experience.
Did he come from oil and gas?
Yes, he did. And he came from a company who had delivered IT services in-house for the most part. And by the way, we still do use partners for some of our IT sourcing, like Service Desk is still sourced to Pomeroy, and we still do use partners for some functions. And we augment with contractors for projects and that as necessary.
Great. Questions for Brent? All right. Thank you very much, Brent. Appreciate it.